What's up? What's up? What's up? Hello, welcome to another Read With Me session. I'm yours truly, Isabel Vidal, and I'm here to read with you. Amazing, amazing, amazing knowledge, amazing wisdom, amazing experiences from books like this one. So we are currently reading Good to Great by the great Jim Collins. And this is the book that you should read before to Last, Built to Last. And I'm really, really intrigued by this book. Our own company has reshifted this entire year to focus on something that we're more passionate about. And I feel like in business and in life, okay, you go in steps, right? First, you learn how to crawl. Then you learn how to walk. Then you learn how to run fast, or actually walk fast. Then you learn how to run fast. And then eventually you're just like being able to run, and do other things while you're running, right? Whether that is, getting a baton or jumping across certain things if you want to become a master at things, whatever. Okay. What I'm learning and what I'm getting out of this book is that in order to become great, you have to acknowledge where you are in those steps. Sometimes when we're, building a new habit, when we're building new processes, when we're building new ways of becoming better versions of ourselves, whether it's in our business, whether it's in our relationships or our family or, friends, relationships, you name it, business, whatever, there's certain steps that it has to take. Well, this book allows you to see where you might be. So, for example, we're on chapter 4, but here we have, in order to go from here to here, there's 1, 2, 3 main steps that you should really understand. When you understand this step and you can go to the next step, that's when you experience breakthrough, and that's where you experience precisional growth, predictability. This is where we're at now. Okay, we're on chapter 4. It's confronting the brutal facts. I'm not trying to sugarcoat anything here, and you guys know that I'm very straight up with my stuff here. I don't like to mess around, because what I love about this book is the fact that it's backed by freaking research and data. Okay. Like literally half this book, if you look at this entire book, this entire just bunch of pages in the back are just references on where they got the facts for what you're reading. That to me means everything, because with everything that's happening in the world, I'm kind of at a point where show me the facts and I'll believe you. Or I want to learn something factual so I can take proactive measures and just take things to the next level. That's where I'm at in my life, right? So without further ado, I want to dive into this particular chapter. As every chapter in this book, it has been really great and very juicy. And when I mean juicy on this channel, I mean they're thick chapters. So sometimes I break them up into 2 parts or maybe even 3, depending on how it is. With this particular chapter, I think it's going to be a 2 section, 2 part. So without further ado, if you have some coffee with you, if you have some water with you, make sure to take a sip and join me on this amazing, amazing journey. Okay. Confront the brutal facts, yet never lose faith. Oh, love this. There's no worse mistake in public leadership than to hold out false hopes soon to be swept away. That's from Winston Churchill. In the early 1950s, the Great Atlantic and Pacific Tea Company commonly known as the AMP, stood as the largest retailing organization in the world and one of the largest corporations in the United States, at one point ranking behind only General Motors in annual sales. Kroger, in contrast, stood as an unspecular grocery chain, less than half the size of AMP, with performance that barely kept pace with the general market. Then in 1960, AMP began to falter, while Kroger began to lay the foundations for a transition into a great company. From 1959 to 1973, both companies lagged behind the market, with Kroger pulling just a bit ahead of the AMP. After that, the two companies completely diverged, and over the next 25 years, Kroger generated cumulative returns 10 times the market and 80, that's 80 times better than AMP. How did such a dramatic reversal of fortunes happen? And how could a company as great as AMP become so awful? AMP had a perfect model for the first half of the 20th century when two world wars and a depression imposed frugally upon Americans. Cheap, plentiful groceries sold in utilitarian stores. But in the affluent second half of the 20th century, Americans changed. They wanted nicer stores, bigger stores, more choices in stores. They wanted fresh baked bread, flowers, health foods, cold medicines, fresh produce, 45 choices of cereal, and 10 types of milk. They wanted offbeat items like 5 different types of expensive sprouts and various concoctions of protein powder and Chinese healing herbs. Oh, and they wanted to be able to do their own banking and get their own annual flu shots while shopping. In short, they no longer wanted grocery stores. They wanted superstores with a big block S on the chest, offering almost everything under the roof with lots of parking, cheap prices, clean floors, and a gazillion checkout lines. Now, right off the bat, you might be thinking, okay, so the story of AMP is one of the aging companies that had a strategy that was right for the times, but the times change and the world passed it by as younger, better attuned companies gave customers more of what they wanted. What's so interesting about that? It's everything. Here's what's interesting. Both Kroger and AMP were old companies. Kroger at 82 years and AMP was 111 years, heading into 1970s. Both companies had nearly all their assets invested in traditional grocery stores. Both companies had strongholds outside of the major growth areas of the United States, and both companies had knowledge of the world around them. It was changing. Yet one of the companies confronted the brutal facts of the reality that head on, it completely changed its entire system in response. The other stuck its head in the sand. Confronted the brutal facts of reality head on and completely changed its entire system in response. In 1958, Forbes magazine described AMP as a hermit kingdom run as an absolute monarchy by an aging prince, Ralph Burger. The successor of the Harper brothers, who had built the AMP dynasty, sought to preserve two things above all else: cash dividends for the family foundation and the past glory of the Harper brothers. And according to one AMP director, Burger considered himself the reincarnation of old John Hartford, even to the point of wearing a flower in his lapel every day from the Hartford's greenhouse. And he tried to carry out against all opposition what he thought Mr. John Hartford would have liked. And Burger instilled a "what would Mr. Hartford do" approach to decisions, living by the motto, "You can't argue with 100 years of success." Indeed, though Burger, Mr. Hartford continued to be the dominant force on the board for nearly 20 years, and never mind the fact that he had already been dead. As the brutal facts about mismatch between its past model and the changing world began to pile up, AMP mounted an increasingly spirited defense against those facts. In one series of events, the company opened a new store called the Golden Key, a separate brand where it could experiment with new methods and models to learn what customers wanted. It sold no A&P product branded names. It gave the store managers more freedom and experimented with innovative new departments, and it began to evolve towards the new modern superstore. Customers really liked it. Here, right under their noses, they began to discover the answers to the questions of why they were losing market share and what they could do about it. What did A&P executives do with the Golden Key? They didn't like the answers that it gave, so they closed it. They were closed. They even had an incubator. Like what they're talking about, they created a little incubator to understand what was going on. And because they had the resources to actually fund that incubator and get the facts and the data and put in some time and effort, because they didn't like what they got, they shut it down. A&P then began a pattern of lurching from one strategy to another, always looking for a single stroke solution to its problems. Ooh. Okay, let me read this again. This is a habit that we might have as human beings, and this might be the reason why not a lot of people succeed. Okay, listen to this. A&P began a pattern of lurching from one strategy to another, always looking for a single stroke solution to its problems, a single stroke solution to its problems. It held pep rallies, launched programs, grabbed fabs, fired CEOs, hired CEOs, and fired them yet again. It launched with one industry observer called the scorched earth policy, radical price cutting strategies to build market share, but never dealt with the basic facts that the customers wanted, not lower prices, but different stores. The price cutting led to cost cutting, which led to even dabber stores and poor service, which in turn drove customers away, further driving down margins, resulting in even dirtier stores and worse service. And after a while, the crud kept mounting. Not only, one of the former A&P managers mentions that we not only had dirt, we had dirty dirt. Yeesh. Meanwhile, over at Kroger, a completely different pattern arose. Kroger also conducted experiments in the 1960s to test the superstore concept, and by 1970, the Kroger executive team came to an inescapable conclusion. The old model grocery store, which accounted for nearly 100% of Kroger's business, was going to become extinct. And unlike A&P, however, Kroger confronted this brutal truth and acted on it. The rise of Kroger is remarkably simple and straightforward, and almost maddeningly so. During the interviews, Lyle Irvingham and his predecessor Jim Herring, CEOs during pivotal transition years, were polite and helpful, and they were a bit exasperated by our questions. To them, it just seemed so clear. When we asked Everingham to allocate 100 points across the top 5 factors in the transition, he said, "I find your question a bit perplexing. Basically, we did extensive research, and the data came back loud and clear. The super combination stores were the way of the future. We also learned that you had to be number 1 or number 2 in each market, or you had to exit. Sure, there was some skepticism at first, but once we looked at the facts, there was really no question about what we had to do. So we just did it. Kroger decided to eliminate, change, and replace every single store and depart every region that did not fit the new realities. The whole system would be turned inside out, store by store, block by block, city by city, state by state, and by the early 1990s, Kroger had rebuilt its entire system on the new model and was very well on the way to becoming the number 1 growing chain in America, a position it would attain in 1999, so 9 years after that. Meanwhile, A&P still had over half of its stores in the old 1950 size and had dwindled to a sad remnant of a once great American institution. Damn. The old adage is true. If you can survive 10 years in an industry, okay, and this goes whether you're a Kroger or A&P, or if you're in insurance, if you are a real estate broker, if you're a real estate agent, or even a coach, okay, if you can survive 10 years doing the same exact message and pushing the same exact knowledge and information and selling all that information and actually, hearing to the marketplace, understanding what they want, and then staying in that momentum for 10 years, that is a time frame that it takes for people to reach levels that they would have never ever thought of. People think that nowadays we can just create a product or a course or a service, and then within 1 to 2 months you can become I don't know, sell something at 20 grand, 30 grand, 50 grand, no, like it's not like that, especially if you don't have the backbone or the foundation or the experience or the credibility or even the trust of the marketplace. So just thinking about this, and it just proves like patience is key. Let's get back to it. Facts are better than dreams. Oof, this guy's so good with like one-liners. So freaking good. Check this one out. One of the dominant themes from our research is the breakthrough results come about by a series of good decisions, diligently executed and accumulated one on top of another. And of course, the good to great companies did not have a perfect track record, but on the whole, they made many more good decisions than bad ones, and they made many more good decisions than the comparison companies. And even more important, on the really big choices, such as Kroger's decision to throw all of its resources into the task of converting its entire system to superstore concept, they were remarkably on target. This, of course, begs a question. Are we merely studying a set of companies that just happened by luck to stumble into the right set of decisions? Or was there something more distinctive about the process that dramatically increased the likelihood of being right? The answer, it turns out, is that there was nothing quite distinctive about their process. The good to great companies displayed two distinctive forms of disciplined thought. The first, and the topic of this chapter, is that they infused the entire process with the brutal facts of reality. Second, which we'll discuss in the next chapter, is that they developed a simple yet deeply insightful frame of reference for all decisions when, as in the Kroger case, you start with an honest and a diligent effort to determine the truth of the situation. But the right decisions often became self-evident. Now, okay? Not always, of course, but very often. Even if all decisions do not become self-evident, one thing is certain: you absolutely cannot make a series of good decisions without first confronting the brutal facts. Yeah. The good to great companies operated in accordance with this principle, and the comparison companies generally did not. Yeah, there's so much to talk about just in this concept. Just in this topic, it's not really a concept, but it's the reality of things. Consider Pitney Bowes versus address graph. It would be hard to find two companies in more similar positions at a specific moment in history that then diverged so dramatically. In 1973, they had similar revenues, profits, numbers of employees, and stock charts. Both companies held near monopoly market positions with virtually the same customer base. Pitney Bowes on postage meters and addressograph in address duplicating machine, and both faced the imminent reality of losing their monopolies. Okay, so by 2000, however, Pitney Bowes had grown over to 30,000 employees and revenues in excess of 4 billion, compared to the sorry remnants of addressograph. which had less than 100 million and only 670 employees. And for the shareholder, Pitney Bowes outperformed Addressograph 3,581 to 1. Yes, 3,581 times better. In 1971, a charismatic visionary leader named Roy Ash became CEO of Addressograph, a self-described conglomerature. Ash had previously built Litton by stacking acquisitions together that had since faltered. And according to Fortune, he sought to use Addressograph as a platform to reestablish his leadership prowess in the eyes of the world. Ash set forth a vision to dominate the likes of IBM, Xerox, and Kodak in the emergent field of office automation, a bold plan for a company that had previously only dominated the envelope addresses duplication businesses. There's nothing wrong with a bold vision, but Ash became so wedded to his quixotic quest that, according to the Business Week, he refused to confront the mounting evidence that his plan was doomed to fail and might take down the rest of the company with it. He insisted in milking cash from profitable arenas, eroding the core business while throwing money after a gambit that had little chance of success. Later, after Ash was thrown out of the office and the company had filed for bankruptcy, from which it did later emerge, he still refused to confront reality, saying, "We lost some battles, we were winning the war, but Addressograph was not even close to winning the war. And people throughout the company knew it all the time. Yet the truth went unheard until it was too late. In fact, many of Addressocraft's people bailed out the company, dispirited by the inability to get top management to deal with the facts. Perhaps we should give Mr. Ash some credit for being a visionary who tried to push the company to greater heights. And to be fair, the Addressograph board fired Ash before he had a chance to fully carry out his plans. But the evidence from a slew of respectable articles written at the time suggests that Ash turned a blind eye to any reality and insists with his own vision of the world. There's nothing wrong with pursuing a vision of greatness. And after all, the good to great companies also set to create greatness. But unlike the comparison companies, the good to great companies continuously refine the path to greatness with brutal facts of reality. Yeah, okay. Basically, Mr. Ash over here, he was so gung-ho on his, beauty pageant vision, okay, that he was still wearing the rose-colored glasses, and he couldn't face the facts that, he wasn't making the right decisions, and he was actually just depleting a very strong company, and it was his doing, and ask yourself this, if you're actually running a company right now, there's expenses in the company, all right? Some people associate expenses like subscriptions, or maybe you associate the travel, maybe you have employees, maybe you have contractors, and then look at your expenses, but then also look at what you're bringing in. Okay, if one employee does not equate to 4 times the amount that's coming in, then that employee is not really doing any justice in your business. If all your subscriptions, okay, whether that be 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 a month on subscriptions, does not equate to the amount of money that it can actually generate or maintain or cut costs on, then you're overpaying, especially if you're a digital company. Right now, especially in this quarter, all of these companies like Canva, Notion, even our CRM, all these different companies, just from my perspectives, they're coming out with AI. So that means that a lot of this stuff is being just automated on the background, and you can actually get rid of 2 to 3 different platforms that, you are paying a lot of money for, especially in copywriting. So there's a lot of different things that you can just start looking at and being more conscious of, you know? I think when someone is a visionary, sometimes they get caught up with the vision and wanting to put this and this and this. It's like creating this whole entire, outfit. And then you want this fabric and that fabric and these buttons and this thread and, this whatever, whatever. And then you start grabbing. But then you put it all together and you're like, oh, well, this doesn't look wrong. And then you start cutting. And then before you know it, you've grabbed so much that what you've created is just a bunch of cuts, and whatever you put together doesn't even make sense, but it costs a lot, So I'm just like trying to make a point here with all these companies. They faced the facts, the brutal facts of what the marketplace was sharing. If you're currently trying to offer somebody a $20,000, $30,000 program, okay, or even a $10,000 course or something, or a program, whatever it is that you're selling, and no one's biting, okay, you can change, you can pivot, okay, and by no one's biting, you have to have proof, right? I think this is where the real argument is like people haven't even talked to clearly outreach that person, communicated to at least a minimum of 1,000 people to get answers. Like they talk to 10 people, 20 people, and they're like, the market, no one likes, no one's buying. People will buy. They always buy. And if your offer sucks, the market will tell you. Let's finish it off here, okay? When you turn over rocks and look at all the squiggly things underneath, you can either put the rock down, or you can say, my job is to turn over rocks and look at the squiggly things. Even if what you see can scare the hell out of you. The quote from Pitney Bowes executive Fred Purdue could have come from any of the Pitney Bowes executives we interviewed. They all seemed a bit, well, to be blunt, neurotic and compulsive about Pitney's position in the world. This is a culture that is very hostile to complacency. We have an itch that we just accomplished. We have an itch that what we just accomplished, no matter how great, is neither going to be good enough to sustain us. Said another. Wow, what a culture. We have an itch that what we just accomplished, no matter how great, is never going to be good enough to sustain us. Pitney's first management meeting of the new year typically consisted of about 15 minutes discussing the previous year, almost always superb results, and 2 hours talking about the scary squiggly things that might impede future results. Pitney Bowes' sales meetings were quite different from the aren't we great rah-rah sales conferences typically most companies do. The entire management team would lay itself open to searing questions and challenges from salespeople who dealt directly with customers. The company created a long-standing tradition of forums where people could stand up and tell senior executives what the company was doing wrong, shoving rocks and squiggling things in their faces and saying, look, you'd better pay attention to this. The Dressel-Graph's case, especially in contrast to Pitney Bowes, illustrated pivotal points. Strong, charismatic leaders like Roy Ash can all, too, become the de facto reality driving a company. Throughout the study, we found comparison companies where the top leader led with such force or instilled such fear that people worried more about the leader, what he would say or what he would think, what he would do, than they worried about the external reality and what it would do to the company. Yeah. Recall the climate of Bank of America described in the previous chapter, wherein the managers would not even make a comment until they knew how the CEO felt. We did not find this pattern of companies like Wells Fargo and Pitney Bowes, where people were much more worried about the scary squiggly things than about the feelings of the top management. That moment a leader allows himself to become the primary reality people worry about, rather than the reality being the primary reality, rather than reality being the primary reality, you have a recipe for mediocrity, or worse. This is one of the key reasons why less charismatic leaders often produce better long-term results than their more charismatic counterparts. Wow. Simply put, sometimes the loudest person in the room, the person that is the most charismatic and has all of the jokes, that person might not be the one that's actually running the show. That person might be good, to have around, but they're not the one moving the needles. They're actually using those needles to create, and not make. Indeed, for those of you with a strong charismatic personality, it is worthwhile to consider the idea that charisma can be as much a liability as an asset. Yeah, I agree with that. And I put myself in this category too. Okay. Your strength of personality can sow the seeds of problems. When people filter the brutal facts from you, you can overcome the liabilities of having charisma, but it does require conscious attention. Winston Churchill understood the liabilities of his strong personality, and he compensated for them beautifully during the Second World War. Churchill, as you may know, maintained a bold and unwavering vision that Britain would not just survive, but prevail as a great nation. And despite the whole world wondering, what if, not if, but when Britain would sue for peace. During the darkest days, with nearly all of Europe and North Africa under Nazi control, the United States hoping to stay out of the conflict, and Hitler fighting a one-front war he had not yet turned into Russia, Churchill said, "We are resolved to destroy Hitler and every vestige of the Nazi regime. And from this, nothing will turn us. Nothing. We will never parley. We will never negotiate with Hitler or any of his gang. And we shall fight him by land. We shall fight him by sea. We shall fight him in the air. And until, with God's help, we have rid the earth of his shadow." I love that. I love that. Armed with this bold vision, Churchill never failed, however, to confront the most brutal facts. He feared that this towering charismatic personality might deter bad news from reaching him in its starkest form. So, early in the war, he created an entirely separate department outside of the normal chain of command, called the Statistical Office, with the principal function of feeding him, continuously updated and completely unfiltered, the most brutal facts of reality. And he relied heavily on this special unit throughout the war, repeatedly asking the facts, just the facts. As the Nazis pranced swept across Europe, Churchill went to bed and slept soundly. "I had no need for cheering dreams," he wrote. "Facts are better than dreams." Strong. Wow. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna pause it here, and I'll see you in the next part of this particular book or chapter where we actually finish it off. I'm gonna do a two-part of this one, but the next one is gonna be a little bit less, me talking to you about everything, and more just reading about what's about to take place. Or maybe I'll just interrupt, because that's my style. But when it comes to me, is like, especially now, if you're at a point in your business or in your life where you've received enough information and you're ready to take action, and that's where I feel like I am. If you believe in human design and you understand, what is leading you or what is calling you to take the next step, listen to yourself. And also look at the reality, face the brutal facts, pick up those rocks and look at the scary things at the bottom. Look at them and then listen to yourself and understand that you have the power. You have the actual tools and resources within you to actually make the decision. Okay? You have it all within. So I'll see you in the next one where we actually finalize this chapter 4 of this amazing book. And I'm so excited for what's to come, because I can tell already we're going to be talking about the climate where truth is ahead. This is where everything shifts. After this chapter is where breakthrough happens, and we get to see and understand where and how breakthrough actually continues on from good to great. I'll see you in the next Read With Me session, and talk to you later. Bye.